Okay, let's do it. Not quite so sprightly tempo.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Let's do the record that was Fitzgerald again.
The record. Nope. Turner died last week, so we can
Creole bell. Sing the Creole bell now. Maybe we could put a little freight train in there too. Let's do freight train. We're going to Creole bell. Like that. Yeah, good.
Good morning. Welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Michelle Itano, and I am a member of the Worship Associates Ministry here at the church. I especially want to welcome any guests or newcomers to our church and to call your attention to the special note for you, welcome guests and newcomers, at the bottom of the backside of the order of service. I would also like to welcome those of you attending online. Lyrics to hymns and all elements of the service may be found on the live stream screen. And a complete order of service, including this week's announcements, is available via the link in the Sunday morning email and on the church website. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. I'd like to call your attention to some of the announcements in the order of service and in the Sunday morning email, including the invitation to Carter Smith's ordination later today. The in-person Sunday social will be held immediately following this service. As a reminder, please turn off or silence any cell phones during the service to maintain a worshipful experience. Please rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn, number 208, in your gray hymnal, Every Time I Feel the Spirit. Those joining virtually can find the words for the hymn linked in the online order of service. There's a quote by the author Annie Dillard that goes like this: "It is madness to wear ladies' straw hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews. For the sleeping God may wake someday and take offense, or the waking God may draw us to where we can never return." Here, Annie Dillard is talking about some challenging lessons that religion and life may have to teach. What you think you know may not actually be so. There is a lot in life that is not under your control. Leave plenty of space for mystery and the unknown. Come, let us welcome the mystery that is beyond our knowing. Come, let us worship together. Words for today's chalice lighting can be found in the order of service. If you wish to do so, please join me in reading them. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and, renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown.
Good morning, and thank you for coming out to church on this beautiful North Carolina early February morning. Each week in our service, we hold a time for sharing the joys and the sorrows that we bring with us into this beloved community. It's during this time that if you've come with either a significant personal joy or a significant personal sorrow, that you're invited to come forward, place a stone in the water, speak your name into the microphone, and in a sentence, and no more than 2 sentences, share your joy or your sorrow. Let us enter into this time of tenderness and trust. Are there any joys and sorrows this morning?
Good morning. I'm Salem McNee. I have two joys this morning. One is that my Aunt Vicki is here with me, who came down from New York so many times when my dad was ill and made that whole period so much more bearable. And so you can come see us at coffee. I almost said happy hour. Come see us at coffee hour and say hi to my wonderful aunt. And the other is I've seen all three of my kids face to face in person the last few weeks, and they're all thriving, which if you've followed my family at all, that's something to really be thankful for right now. So the kids are all right. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilkes, and I'm placing a stone of remembrance for my uncle, Uncle Rod in South Carolina, who passed away earlier this month, rather suddenly. And the stone of I have concern for his family and his grandchildren and everyone. He's very sad. So, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rowan. I grew up here and I'm a member here now. I have a big joy today. On May 6th, I graduated from Florida Southern College with a Bachelor of Science degree, summa cum laude, and with honors. So super excited to have that accomplishment under my belt. It was quite the journey with COVID and everything. And yeah, excited for this next chapter of my life.
Two stones for Shannon and Maureen. Less than 4 weeks after Shannon fell and broke her hip and had to have surgery, they are in Germany as they planned.
And one final stone is placed, as it is each week, for all those joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts that were not spoken. I invite us to take a moment to connect with the joys that were shared, the joys that we hold in our hearts, the joys of this community, and the joys and sorrows of our world. Let us take a moment of silence to hold these. Amen, and blessed be. We're going to do something for the go off script just a little bit. Glenn, late in the week, sent me this wonderful reading or interpretation or spiritual exercise related to our sung meditation. Our sung meditation is number 1049. It's from the Taizé tradition, and 1049 in the Teal hymnal. And so how it's going to work is that these words are by Ken Herman, who is a music director, a Unitarian Universalist music director, and they're poetic. And how it works is that there's sort of a 4-line stanza, and then we sing in the response. But we're going to start off by kind of practicing together. You'll notice that the words are in Italian, in English, and in Spanish. And so we're actually going to practice singing the Italian words a couple times together to get the feeling of it, and then I'll explain what comes next. how this works is that I'm going to read the stanza. It's 4 lines, and then we're going to respond in the Italian. Then I'll do another one, and we'll respond in English. Then I'll do another one, and then we'll respond in Spanish. And then I'll do my last stanza, and then we are going to choose whichever language you'd like to choose, and we'll do it as a 4-part round. So it is going to, that's part of how it's supposed to go. So just feel it and experience it. All right, ready? The Spirit moves in mysterious ways. Words by Ken Herman about the Spirit. Fire of revelation, flame of compassion, illumine our hearts and kindle our spirits. Cloven tongues of wisdom rain down on us and unleash our tongues with the Spirit of truth. Light from uncreated light, fill our sight with amazing revelations and new visions. Fire of the Spirit, sear our conscience with a zeal for justice. Flame of aspiration, move our feet to tread the paths of reconciliation. Come, Creator Spirit, comfort us with the warmth of your eternal love. Come, Creator Spirit, unite us with a zeal for communion with all creation. Bless us, convert us, may we become the fire. There are two readings this morning, an ancient and a modern, and I chose to do the ancient mostly to spare the difficult pronunciations. Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 13. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place, and suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where the disciples were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages, as the Spirit gave them the ability. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem. And at this sound, the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear, each of us, in our own native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, the residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs. In our own language, we hear them speaking about God's deeds and power." All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" But others sneered and said, "They are filled with new wine."
The second reading this morning comes from UU minister Marlon Lavenhar. It is a passage from a sermon he gave at the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly in 2015. A longtime member of the church walked into my office one day. He is a staunch humanist, a lawyer about 60 years old. He said, "Marlon, I want to tell you something that I would have never told anyone in this church and never have. I grew up Pentecostal, and to this day, I speak in tongues." I tried not to look too surprised, but I was shocked. I asked, "How often?" And he said, "Probably about once or twice a week." He described it as a kind of meditation that allows his mind to rest. Once I got over my initial disbelief and quietly checked my own prejudices, I was struck hardest by realizing that this is a central part of his spiritual life. And he has spent 30 years in our congregation and has never felt he could tell anyone in our church without being judged negatively and maybe even made to feel like an outsider. And he was right. I know, because that's how I felt myself initially. Of course, he's the same intelligent, successful, rational, justice-centered man I've always known. It made me bump up against my own prejudices. It was a pretty stark condemnation of me and my community, that he had felt he had to keep his truth, his spirituality, in the closet in order to be welcome in our church. Don't you wonder how many are hiding themselves and their spirituality within our congregations? I'll tell you one thing, we'll never grow our churches if they're places where people feel they have to be spiritually closeted. Freely have we received gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. If you wish to donate online, there is a QR code on the back of the order of service, and there is information on the church's website. We will now receive the morning offering.
Happy Pentecost, everybody. I said happy Pentecost, everybody. Be honest, how many of you even know what Pentecost is? And out-of-town ministers who are here visiting, you're skewing the results. I saw your hands. There's a lot that I want to do this morning. I want to introduce you briefly to the Christian holiday, holy day of Pentecost. I want to make an argument for Pentecost being the most Unitarian Universalist of all Christian holidays. And since Pentecost is the birthday of the church, I want to say a few words about church. And since we as a church will be gathering at 3 o'clock this afternoon to ordain Carter Smith to the ministry, I want to say a few, we can applaud for that. I want to say a few words about ministry. Carter did say that I could have 5 minutes in my remarks this afternoon, and then wrote me back and said she'd appreciate it if I could only use 4 of those 5 minutes. So this morning, you're going to get to hear everything that I had to cut out of my remarks for this afternoon. But mostly, since Pentecost marks the time when those in the early church catch the Spirit, I want to spend a little time exploring the Spirit together. All right, let's do it. So Pentecost is a Christian holiday. It marks, as the reading from Acts described, a collective spiritual experience that happened to the early disciples, described in the 2nd chapter of the book of Acts. When you take a class on the New Testament in divinity school, you learn that it was the same author who wrote the Gospel of Luke that also wrote the sequel, the book of Acts. And so it begins just after, Acts begins just after Jesus' death and resurrection and reappearances. The word Pentecost literally means 50th, as it takes place 50 days from Easter, 50 days after Easter, seven times, really 49, 7 times 7 weeks of 7 days. It happens concurrently, ready to get confused, it happens concurrently with the Jewish holy day of Shavuot, a pilgrimage festival observed 50 days after Passover, which was known by Hellenistic Jews as Pentecost, the 50th, just to keep things nice and confused. So a community of early Jewish followers of Jesus had gathered in Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festival of Shavuot, and something miraculous happens. The Holy Spirit descends upon the group, and they begin to speak in a language that is universally understood. Today, there is a major branch of Christianity known as Pentecostalism that draws fairly literally from the book of Acts. Their worship includes various forms of catching the Spirit, most notably speaking in tongues, being overcome by that experience of the divine Spirit and letting the Spirit speak through you. As far as Christian holidays go, Pentecost has basically no cultural recognition, but it's meant to be a joyful day, more than joyful, ecstatic, rapturous. As Pentecost marks the birth of the church, it is a day commonly associated with new beginnings, including baptisms and ordinations. In fact, it is a preferred day for ordinations, which is something that I'm not sure our ordinand took into consideration when she chose the day, but that's okay. I want to propose to you that Pentecost is actually a holiday that has something to say to Unitarian Universalists. As a Unitarian Universalist minister, I've had plenty of opportunities to try to explain our religious tradition, to which I've devoted my life, to people who've never heard of it, and who regard us with suspicion because we challenge their assumptions of what religion is and does. I'm asked a question like, "What does your church believe?" And I say, well, we don't all believe the same thing, And the person asking me, that's not real. I'm asked, does your church believe in God? Well, some of us do, and many of us don't, and some of us believe in a more naturalistic concept of God, and a few of us believe in multiple gods. That can't work. I'm asked, do you all pray? Well, some of us pray, and others meditate, and some even read tarot cards, and others mostly try to avoid spiritual stuff. You're filled with new wine. But Unitarian Universalism is real, and it does work, because there is a thing that happens, which is that across our diversity of spiritual practices and theological understandings, somehow we can speak out of our own deepest understandings of the ultimate, whether we call that God or higher power or great mystery or oversoul or collective unconscious or Gaia or cosmos or Allah or Atman or goddess or ground of being or none of the above. We can speak out of our own deepest understandings of what is ultimate, and we can somehow understand one another. At least I hope we can. At least I hope we can. We are like those witnesses from Judea and Cappadocia, from Pamphylia and Phrygia, only we're humanists and atheists and pantheists and panentheists and process theologians and transcendentalists and other theological words that are as confusing to me as Pamphylia and Phrygia. I'm not even sure where those are, to be honest. And I mean this ability to speak to one another and to understand each other. I mean this more than analogy. I mean that listening is a gift of the Spirit. I mean that understanding is a gift of the Spirit. I mean that translation is a gift of the Spirit. Theological diversity in community is one of the ways we speak in tongues. Theological diversity in community is one of the ways we speak in tongues. We've got some guests here with us today. Carter, you didn't ask me to do a charge to the minister this afternoon, but I want to say something about ministry. I'm just taking my time today, and I'll keep it to 4 minutes later on. Our Unitarian Universalist faith starts with our own direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. We start with our own experience. I want to propose an idea, which is that the most alive, most vital, and most vibrant Unitarian Universalist congregations are places that encourage people to share their own experiences of transcending mystery and wonder, and are places where the spiritual gifts of translation is cultivated and nurtured in community. Think back to that story that Marlon Lavenhar shared. Once I got over, he writes, once I got over my initial disbelief and quietly checked my own prejudices, I was struck hardest by realizing that this is a central part of my parishioner's spiritual life. And he spent 30 years in our congregation and has never felt he could tell anyone in our church without being judged negatively, and maybe even made to feel like an outsider. What a radical idea that church should be a place where we can talk about the spiritual experiences that shape us and the practices that sustain us. Ideally, church should be a place where we come out of those spiritual closets and share our experiences, especially the experiences that are uncanny, mysterious, and defy rational explanation. And here is what I've found in ministry, that the more people are encouraged to do this, the more the Spirit can take hold. Speaking in of these experiences has a leavening effect, and the church as a result becomes more authentic, less uptight, more open, more alive, more spiritually alive. I've heard that some Unitarian Universalist congregations have fights over theological language. I've heard that in some Unitarian Universalist congregations, people try to put language restrictions on what people, the minister or the congregants, can say. Too much God talk, too much Bible, not enough God talk. Try telling the Spirit that it can only speak to Judea, but not Cappadocia. When ministers go to seminary, we're trained in these things with fancy names: hermeneutics, exegesis, which really means interpretation and translation, which I believe to be a spiritual practice. They are gifts of the Spirit. And theological diversity in community is one of the ways that we speak in tongues, understanding each other's language as if it were our own. But this is also a collective practice, not just a ministerial practice. The word that you can't stand, the word that drives you nuts as you sit there in the pews, may be the word that the person sitting next to you needs to hear. So let us all, ministers and congregants alike, practice the art of spiritual translation. As one of the hymns in our Teal hymnal puts it, when we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. Early on in my ministry, in fact, when I was an intern minister, I had an experience that was very much like the one that Marlon Lavenhar shared about the parishioner who spoke in tongues. In this case, it was a person who came to me, showed up one time at a noon kind of spiritual conversation session that I was leading in the congregation where I did my internship. And this guest, a new person in the church, showed up and lingered after class, and she asked me if she could speak with me. And she said, what I want to do is that if it's all right, is to tell you an experience. See, I was on this retreat. It was a retreat, it was out in the woods, it was a camping retreat, and one day I went for a walk in the middle of the day and sat down on this nice grassy patch beside a stream. And while I sat down, something happened and I felt myself paralyzed. I could not move. And I felt an electric surge flowing through me. Not violently, but like I was being electrocuted in a nonviolent way, if that makes hard to put into words. And this went on for some time, and then I felt my body, my soul lift out of my body and rise up into the air 100 feet above my body. And then it returned. And I returned, and the experience was over. It lasted about 40 minutes. And I had this experience, so I just sat there, completely unprepared for how to respond or what to say. I'd like to think that I was non-judgmental. What she was looking for was not an explanation, not a diagnosis, not a medical diagnosis from someone untrained in medicine. What she was looking for was someone to hear, to understand, to believe, and to regard it with curiosity and wonder. What a powerful experience that must have been. The Spirit moves not just through speaking in tongues, and not just through out-of-body experiences, though those are ways in which the Spirit moves. The Spirit moves in all manner of ways. As a disruptor of the status quo, as a disturber of unjust peaces, as a force for radical inclusion, as a breaker down of illusions of our separateness. The Spirit moves through us through art and joy and justice and lots and lots and lots of mystery. And in response to that Spirit, we ourselves may learn to move in those ways. To be the tearer down of walls that we build up, that divide. To be the unbanner of books and of words that we're told not to say. Spirit moves us to affirm the sacredness of the oppressed, and moves in us to free us, and moves in us to free us, and moves in us to free us all. Amen. As we move to our closing this morning, I want to share just a few words about our closing hymn. When I was telling Marian Hirsch, our Director of Religious Education, about my topic this morning, she said, "Ooh, you should sing a Pentecost hymn. Come Down, O Love Divine." Marian also asked me to tell you that this was a song that was sung at her wedding. So, and that it is her favorite, one of her favorite Christian hymns. So when we sing it, let's really sing it. And this is a song that is, you'll see at the bottom of the page that it is a hymn for Pentecost. And so we sing in many languages, many words, many articulations, and here is one articulation. So let us sing it together. Hymn number 271 in the gray hymnal. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together.
Sing never so
please remain standing in body or in spirit. You will find the words for extinguishing the chalice in your order of service. Please join me if you wish to do so. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank all those who contributed to making the service so worshipful this morning. Please join us in singing Shalom. The words are in your order of service. As you are comfortable, please either hold hands with the person next to you or cross your arms over your chest.